everyone, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Beth and this is my friend Brandy.
Hello.
And this today is a tutorial for making a covered box. This is an example. This is a project that I taught in July at the Tomorrow's Heirlooms retreat. And it's basically a piece of stitch needlework that was designed to go on the top of a box. And the rest of the box is covered in fabric. This was a plain paper mache box when we started. This one has a painted rim on the lid. Today we're going to actually cover it all in fabric. And I didn't have a completed finished stitched piece for today's tutorial, so I went into my stash and I found some abandoned projects. What I remembered to do. And I patchworked them together. So, you know, this is a great way to use up some projects that you no longer are in love with, but you haven't been able to get rid of. The phone is ringing. My kids are at school, so I'm going to answer it. We can cut this. So, when you're approaching a project like this, I want you to think outside the box. No pun intended. I'm going to show you a variety of things that I have used to cover. Here's an example. Bought at Goodwill as a set of 3. This used to be apparently a snowman. There was a larger box on the bottom that I've already used for another project. $3 for 3 boxes. And, you know, some people might like to decorate it with it just like this, but the purpose of me buying it was to recover them. Here's another one. This is a tin that came with some coasters in it. And we're not going to cover this one today, but we could have a similar approach to what we're doing. Maybe leave the metal the way it is, but just attach the needlework to the top. Here's one that I would only attach a piece of needlework to the top of as well, because it's actually a great looking little box. And at some point I filled the inside with old print from a book called The Story of Mankind. Greek, Asiatic, I don't know, I think I purposely chose pages that had interesting words on them, as if I was ever going to read the inside of that box.
You never know.
You never know.
You just might get bored someday.
Oh, here's a good one. Brie. Brie cheese. These boxes are great. Now they feel kind of flimsy when you start with them. They're, you know.
Yeah. There
are some Brie cheese boxes that are made with wood that might work better. But once you get this covered with glue and fabric, it's surprisingly not a flimsy box anymore, because you've reinforced it, you've stiffened it up. Those are just some suggestions. Here's an old wallpaper box. You may love the print on it, and you may just want to attach needlework to the top. Just trying to get you to think about different options. Here's one with no needlework on the top, needlework, just covered with fabric. By the way, this fabulous old fabric is no longer available. Sorry. I've tried. Can't find it anywhere.
It's really cute.
It is. So this is an old Blackbird Designs, and this was Wyndham, I think, is the one that came out with a whole sampler series. A lot of you are probably familiar with it. And this one was a tight fitting box. So I filled the inside with old advertising. I've got an old seam binding package. The wonders of Mod Podge.
Indeed.
Yes.
It's magic.
So those are some examples of what can be done using the technique we're going to demonstrate today. So,
teach me a wise one.
By the way, my friend Brandy, after years of coaxing, maybe months of coaxing, maybe weeks of coaxing.
Months of coaxing.
Months of coaxing?
Years.
She has put up her first FlossTube video.
Actually, it's 3. I have 3 videos
You
up
have
now.
3 videos now?
3 videos up now. But I put 2 of them out like the same day.
Oh.
So it's all good.
So tell me, what's your FlossTube channel called?
Brandy Goebel, Every home needs a gnome.
Every home needs a gnome.
Yeah.
You should have brought one of your gnomes.
I should have brought one of my gnomes. I showed off my gnomes in one of my last videos.
Oh, good.
They're so cute.
One of the connections that Brandy and I have, among many, is that we are both of Norwegian descent. And so we both have an affinity for tomties,
Yes.
otherwise known as gnomes.
Yes, they have bonded us well.
They have. And lefse
Absolutely.
and cross stitch. And we are the rhythm section in a band.
We're tight.
I know.
It's kind of cool. And you've taught me everything I know about cross-stitching in the modern world, like past 1997.
Precious moments.
Yeah, yeah.
No more precious moments.
No more. No
Okay.
more.
If you love precious moments, I don't hold it against you because they are darn cute. I just don't ever want to stitch a precious moments
They're
again.
very precious.
They're precious.
They're just precious.
So, where are we going to start?
Tell me.
Let's start with the needlework.
Okay.
So, Brandy found this darling little scrap. Oh, by the way, I was sitting down. There's a little height discrepancy, so
A little bit.
I'm sitting on a bar stool. Some of you may relate to. Anyway, she had this darling little stitched floral motif that she coffee stained. I'm showing them the front, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's got some little bits on it, that's why. That she picked up from my countertop, not from her house. That she coffee stained. She wasn't gonna do anything with this, but it's gonna make an adorable top for a box. She chose this little snowman head box, and the first step that I took for her box, we did a little bit of homework ahead of time just to save time for this tutorial, is I cut a little foam core circle that is the same size as her box lid. Now, you may not have a fancy foam core circle cutter like I do. This is called a Foamworks foam board circle cutter, model WA8001. All of this information I will provide below. I will also have a link to a PDF tutorial, so you don't have to write all of this down. Found this on Amazon, and it cuts foam board circles for you. It was in the $20 range, I want to say, and it has been a fantastic tool for me. You may not want to take that step. So, another thing you could do is get a cereal box and use the lid of your box. This is the box that I'm going to cover today. It's a bentwood wallpaper box that I found, again, at my local Goodwill for $3. I think I've had this in my stash for 8 or 10 years. And it's going to be finally put to use today. Because it's oval shaped, I couldn't use my circle cutter. So I took my lid and I took the bottom of the box and traced it on a cereal box twice because I wanted it thicker than a single thickness of cereal box. Cut 2 cereal box ovals and glued them together. So now we have a sturdier, it's not acid free, so if you're making a box that you want to be an heirloom piece, I would recommend going the foam core route or some acid free mat board. There's a lot of acid free materials that you can use. Check your local craft store scrapbooking section. You'll find anything that you possibly could want for something that is archival. For my purposes, I'm already using a wooden box, which by nature is not acid free. So I figured adding cereal box cardboard
No harm, no foul.
to my scraps that would have been thrown away, you're going to end up with a fun, usable box that is not precious, right? You can stab pins into the top if you want. You can toss it on the couch when you're done with, I don't know, whatever.
It's not precious moments either.
It's not precious moments. So, that's first step. Second step is to cut some batting. And here, Brandy,
Yes.
we have some warm and natural cotton. Now, one little aside that I'm going to tell you before you go buy Warm and Natural. If you want to use your box as a pin cushion, you are going to want wool or, dare I say it, fiberfill for the lid because your needles and pins will go into it nicely. Cotton resists being poked. It does not like pins and needles going into it. And I found that out the hard way. I finished a lovely piece with a beautiful domed top with the intent of it being a pin cushion, and I put my first pin in it and it didn't want to go in. It was so frustrating. So save yourself a step. If you're going to use it as a pin cushion, don't use cotton. So back to what we're doing. Brandy is going to use some scissors. I have fabric scissors or craft scissors here for you.
I like these ones.
And pencil or a ballpoint. Do you want a pen or a pencil?
Pencil's fine.
I don't know how well a pencil will write on that.
Let's just
Try it.
Well, not great.
Okay, I'm going to get a pen. All right. So you are going to use your topper circle as a template and trace it onto the batting. You have to decide. You could use one thickness of batting if you want. For just a padded lid, because this is a thin batting, I'm using 2.
Should I use 2?
Your choice. How padded do you want the top?
Padded.
You could use 3 layers. You could use 8 layers and have it be a puffy little pincushion top. Again, not with the Warm and Natural.
Well, this is a little tricky too.
Yeah, it doesn't like being written on,
But that works.
but it works.
Okay. And I can cut them both at the same time, yeah?
Yes. And I would cut on the inside of the ink rather than
Oh,
the outside
okay.
of the ink. Or right on it. Coffee break. This is when we fill the air with mindless trivia about ourselves.
Just banter.
How long have we known each other?
8 years? 7 years?
Was Katie 2 when we met you?
I think.
Okay. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
We met at church through a mutual friend, Karen. I remember the first time I remember talking to you was in Karen's driveway.
Really? I do not remember that.
And Karen telling us how we would get along and be such good friends. And she was telling us all the things we had in common because we both liked to make things. We both had tattoos. That obviously was something that would bind us together.
There's a connector. All right, you're rock and roll,
Karen's
I'm rock
funny.
and roll.
We love how Karen interprets the world a lot.
Yes.
Okay, so now you have your circles.
Yes,
I do. Okay, so you can choose to move on to the next step, or you could take a glue stick and just do a quick, blah, on your cardboard or your foam board.
Do I have to make that sound effect too?
Yes.
Blah.
And attach the bottom layer of your batting to your lid. It just helps keep it secure while you're doing the rest of the work.
Okay.
Okay?
Done.
Done. Next thing you're going to do, actually you're still going to want that, is take your stitched piece
Yes.
and center it over your batting.
I have a hair attached to me.
Is it my hair?
I think it was mine. Center it over.
My daughter is always picking hairs off of me. We're like little monkeys.
It was my job today.
Yes.
And I did not do a good job.
You didn't. You picked off like 2 hairs and left the rest to me.
Well,
So
okay.
figure out how your needlework piece, how you want to place it over your topper. Now this piece, I should note, is actually bigger in diameter than the actual foam circle. So some of the needlework is going to wrap around, and I actually like that. We talked about, do we go with a larger circle so that it frames the needlework, or do we have it wrap around? And we chose the wrap around today. It's totally up to you. Now you are going to, you can either draw a circle to cut along, or you can do what I do.
just wing
Hold
it.
it up and wing it.
I like that.
You are going to want to cut it so that your needlework extends beyond your cardboard, if you're doing just a couple layers of batting, by about 1/2 inch.
Okay.
Don't go with more than that because you'll have too much bulk on the bottom.
Okay.
Now keep in mind you have a thicker board that you're attaching yours to.
Okay.
So basically what we're going to do after the linen is cut is we're going to place a running stitch around the edges, and when we gather that, it's going to pull it into a shower cap and gather it around your top.
So I probably want it to be about there-ish?
Yes.
Okay. I can do that. I can do it, Beth. Maybe.
It can be kind of a freak out moment when you have a piece of needlework that you've stitched and it's time to cut it for finishing. I think it stops a lot of people from doing their own finishing actually. And for me, I've done so much finishing now that I just go at it. It doesn't bother me. But the first 25 times, I don't know, I didn't count. There was always a moment of, what have I done?
I feel like I should have made this a little bit bigger.
So, but it's still going to wrap around the back.
Okay.
You're okay. You could, it would have been a little bit easier if you had made it a little bit bigger.
Well, I could take off one of the layers of batting though, yeah. And that would help a little bit.
I would just leave it on. It's going to be fine. You're going to want it to be snug anyway. And we found at my class in Salty Yarns, we had a couple that were cut too close. And because of how we're going to finish it, even if your gathering doesn't go all the way around the back, which by the way this one will, we're going to add some trim. And trim can hide a lot of flaws in needlework.
It's like black.
Yes. So, it's like black.
Like a black shirt covers up the muffin top.
I'm with you now.
Fashion tips from Brandy. Oh gosh.
I love how the camera wants to just focus on your face. Do you see that?
I do.
You like this?
I just am like this.
You look like Princess Leia with little buns on the side.
I feel like SpongeBob though. All right, let's do this.
All right. Neither of us have ever filmed a video in conjunction with somebody else before. Although Brandy does record a podcast with her husband. So she's used to a little bit of back and forth, but it's her husband. We're used to rabbit trailing. When we get together as a band and practice,
it's almost all rabbit trails.
In between every song,
it's like 10 minutes.
There is some kind of a verbal rabbit trail. And sometimes it's the guys, and sometimes it's us, sometimes it's all four of us, or just three of us, but there are always rabbit trails. Always. I think our band name should not be the Hypocrites, it should be
the Rabbit Trails. We'll take it up with them.
Maybe if we have to reform the band, that'll be our new name. No, I didn't say that live. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish our tops.
Let's.
Okay, so you could use, some people like to use carpet thread. I think that's what it's called. Like when you're making braided carpets, the thread that you use to tie it together.
Okay.
Because it's, or upholstery thread, maybe that's what it's called. It's a nice strong thread. I have always just used whatever was left of my floss and just use a couple strands. But that can be expensive. DMC works, or you could get some cotton pearl. Pearl cotton, this is a number 8. I bought a whole bunch because I know I'll use it. Isn't that cute? I was so happy when it showed up and it had all of the little fat little things of pearl cotton. Anyway, you are going to want a strong thread that you can pull and tug. Some people still broke this at the last retreat because they were really, really pulling it. So there still has to be a level of gentleness. So you're going to want a pretty long length because we're going to double it. And this needs to go around the entire diameter of your needlework piece. So if you're covering, you could use this technique to cover a hat box and use an entire sampler if you wanted. You could.
You could.
We're doing little and medium.
Is this long enough, do you think, for little?
Oh, yeah. I would go a little longer because you're going to double it over. There you go. Do that. And we're going to use number 22 chenille needles. They basically, because they've got a big eye, they're easier to get the bigger thread through. Now, what we're going to do is just put one end through. You threaded that needle like a pro.
It's like I've done it a time or two. I could see the eye of it. It helps.
I know it does with our old eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Aging eyes. Brandy's a year older than me.
I'm not exactly a year. I'm like 8 months older.
No. You are a year and a month older than me.
Dang it.
Because I haven't hit my birthday yet. It's later this month.
I just had mine.
Yeah.
Dang it. All right.
So I'm double knotting mine because I've got linen that is more open and I don't want my knot to slip through. Brandy's stitching is actually on not linen. It's some sort of...
It's a fabric that I found in a fabric store on a bolt, and I went, that looks stitchable. I think it's muslin. Somebody else looked at it and thought it was Ozenberg?
Osnaburg.
Okay.
And that's what it looks like to me.
I have no idea.
It does look highly stitchable. It's an uneven weave.
It is an uneven.
Because your squares aren't exactly squares. They're a little more rectangular.
Yes, which makes my projects all a little bit wonky, which is fine most of the time.
Like it.
But sometimes when you're trying to make a square thing and then it turns out rectangular, it's
not,
a little sad.
Yeah. Okay, so with the top of your needlework facing you.
Okay, hold on a second.
Oh, you're still knotting.
I'm having a really hard time with my knots.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh, well, here. It's because I didn't tell you the step you were supposed to do.
Oh.
So double your thread.
Oh.
And then just do a knot at the end. Because
that's easier.
You want doubled length the whole way, just to add some strength.
Okay.
So you probably only needed a single knot, but I did a double knot.
Fair enough. Okay, cool.
Okay. With your needlework facing you, and probably about 1/4 inch in from the edge, you are just going to do a running stitch all the way around your...
So face side up.
Yes.
Okay.
And my stitches are about 1/8. That's maybe more of 1/4 inch wide. If you do really, really wide running stitches, when you gather it, you're going to end up with more puckering around the outside.
Nobody likes pucker.
You don't need tiny itty bitty stitches, but I would keep them between 1/8 and 1/4 inch.
Is that okay?
You actually might want yours to be a little smaller. With how thick your fabric is, it's not going to gather as well.
So should I pull that then?
No,
I can't.
Just continue on.
Okay. But just smaller.
Yeah, because of the way I did it, you can't undo your stitches.
No, I
Sorry,
cannot.
I set you up for failure. That's what are friends for.
I'll remember, Beth. Don't worry.
You get me back later.
I know where your base lives.
Oh no, don't touch my bait. Which one?
Your baby, your new one.
No, you can't touch that one. I think Jim might be thinking about buying my 4-string.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's got a birthday coming up and he's thinking that maybe that might be his gift to himself, I think.
I see. Okay, well you said go smaller and I don't think I'm going smaller.
It'll all work out. But also, oops, keep in mind how close to the edge we are with your circle.
Should I go? I just need to undo this.
No, just move closer out to the edge for the rest of it. It'll be fine, because remember, we're putting trim over it.
Okay.
So even if when you gather it, your stitches show a little bit, you just choose a trim that will cover it. So.
See, I hate finishing. This is what I've decided recently. I love stitching and I hate finishing, which I think is not uncommon.
No. How many of you out there are saying, join the crowd right now? Actually, if you're watching this video, you probably like finishing. Or you're new to it and you haven't decided yet if you like it or not.
Well, and the only thing, gosh, I wish I could talk. The only way I've ever finished is just framing. And
Right.
even then, it's like Goodwill frames and masking tape. Like, I don't finish anything right.
Ooh, we're gonna have to do a pinning tutorial.
Yeah, I really need to, like, learn how to do that better. I know how to do it
That's
better.
how-
I just don't ever choose to.
That's how I started too. I didn't know what pinning and lacing was. I
Mhm.
just wrapped it around a piece of cardboard and taped it.
Yeah.
And it was good. But I've noticed, like, I can tell which ones of my designs from the early years that I haven't reframed yet because they're
Mhm.
all sagging in their frames.
And I'm noticing that with my pieces too. So yeah, doing actual like fine finishes is a new thing for me. And
Aren't you glad you have me in
I
your
am.
life?
I'm really glad.
I'm self-taught, by the way. So if you watch any of my tutorials, you're going to notice that there is a certain lack of precision.
Which is lovely because that's the way I work too. It's all just like fly by the seat of your pants.
I want finishing to be approachable. Now, there is a time and a place for precision in finishing. Vonna
Mm-hmm.
has some, Twisted Stitcher has some fantastic tutorials, and she is about precision and doing it the right way, and she should be because she's a professional finisher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a designer. All of my creativity goes into the designing, and I want a finished product that's going to look good, but I'm not selling my models. Nobody's going to examine them. They need to look good, they need to hold up, they need to represent my designs well, but what's hidden behind the scenes doesn't really matter to me. Does that
Right.
make sense? It's not that I'm not doing a quality
Mm-hmm.
finishing, it's just that I don't feel the need to measure.
Well, it's the difference between like, you know, the way I finish for myself versus the way I finish for someone else.
Right.
I'm always going to approach somebody else's product with more thought and
More attention to detail.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. What she said.
But if it's just for me, like I know that chances are good that my dog's gonna eat it. So, you know, what's the point?
Dogs. Bad dogs. Are you done yet?
No. I'm really close. Are
Okay.
you?
Well, I am, but
Oh my.
I've done this a few times. So I'm just going to talk while you finish
Yep.
because you're pretty close.
Yep.
Once you've finished your gathered stitch, if you're like me, it's already starting to gather around the outside and looks a little bit like a shower cap.
It does. It's very cute.
And what you're going to do is take your batting side down and place it into your little shower cap. It might be easier if you took some of the gathering out so that you can get it centered how you want it.
Okay, so I'm leaving my needle in.
And how long has
I'm
that?
not-
I think that it's like a 30-minute. I think it's like at 30 minutes it automatically stops recording.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so wherever we were at, I don't know, but I don't think it cut off too much of our process. So,
Okay, now I have a problem. This part doesn't want to gather.
yes,
That's the part you told me
because
it was going to be hard.
you might have to
Kind of go back around that.
strong arm a little bit, and this is why we doubled your thread. So you may find that it doesn't want to gather completely, but that's okay. Get it gathered as much as you can, and then what you're going to do is you're going to use the rest of your thread and you're going to lace across the back to secure it. And just find the places around the edge that look like they need a little extra reinforcing and go through and across. This is going to eat up the rest of your thread really quickly, and you're going to get to a certain spot like me where you're done. You may decide you want to do some more lacing at this point, depending on how much of a perfectionist you are and how tight you want your top, and if it's behaving the way you want it to. Because mine is patchworked anyway, I'm happy with how it looks right now. So this is one of those make it up as you go moments.
I just ripped my fabric.
Yeah, that happens too when you have to do your running stitch so close to the edge. So I am going to knot mine and call it good.
I'm going to call mine good too because I'm out of thread.
Yeah. Is yours lining up how you want it to?
Mm-hmm. Like that way?
That
yeah.
looks good.
I think it's going to be cute.
I like.
Oh my gosh.
Did it pull through again?
Yes.
So you don't feel like you need any more thread to secure it better on the back, or are you happy? Because we are going to
No,
glue
I think
too.
it's fine. Yeah, I just need to stop pulling it through the fabric is all.
Okay. So once you've finished that, you have your top piece. Nice looking on the front.
Except
Unfinished on the back, and that's okay. That's how you want it.
it doesn't, I can't knot it now.
Oh. So here's what because the needle's so long. It's holding really well. So I'm just gonna say,
Just glue.
just cut it and don't touch it.
Okay.
Because of the fabric she's using, it's hanging onto the thread really nicely. So no knot needed.
Cool.
Because hot glue will do the rest.
Yeah.
Or if that worries you and you're in the same situation, do another length of thread nice and long and just lace, lace, lace and fix it with thread.
Mm-hmm.
So there we have.
I like them. They're cute.
Okay, we're going to set those aside.
Okay.
Now we are going to address the fabric for covering the box.
Yes.
So, first thing you want to do is use your lid as a template, and you're going to cut 2 circles, or ovals as my case would be, and using the lid as, and by the way, we're using just plain old cotton quilting fabric, which we probably should have ironed.
Eh.
Oh well.
Iron schmiron.
Who cares? So, you are going to, well, let's go out to an edge. Let's fold an edge over like that. And you want 2 circles that are a little bit larger than your lid. So I would take my pencil and go straight up and down so that your lid is a little bit out. Does that even show on the video? Oh, that doesn't make it better. Whoop. So that your pencil is going straight up and down, or pin as the case may be. Because what you want is a circle that will slightly wrap around the bottom of your box and slightly go up the sides of the inside of your box. So now you can cut this circle right on the line, and
Okay.
you should have just the right size. For mine, I already pre-cut mine.
I kind of can't see part of it, so I'm...
Wait, here, use the pen. That'll show up better. I've got 2 ovals, and you can see that when I get to the step of gluing, they're slightly bigger than the oval box itself. So they'll be able to overlap the corners a little bit.
I have like 5 lines now, so I just am cutting.
It's all good.
Again, winging it. Is it painful to watch somebody else do this and just be like, oh my gosh, you are inept?
Not inept, just slow.
Again, is that painful?
You might have better success cutting the fabric with
Those
these.
scissors are
Oh, you don't like
weird.
mine? She doesn't like
I
mine.
don't.
I've used these for, these have been my fabric cutting scissors for probably more than 20 years.
They're just like,
They're springy.
they're springy.
See,
Springy
it's
scares
because
me.
you have short little fingers.
I do. That's true. Which is why I don't play guitar. I can't even play a ukulele. We found this out in Hawaii. It was the funniest thing. We went into a ukulele store and the lady's like, oh yeah, you can play this.
Every home needs a gnome. Okay, now you are going to cut one circle using your box as a template. It was a plug for your business.
It's a good thing I like you.
It is a good thing you like me. She
Okay.
calls my husband Hagrid because he is 6'3".
He's a giant.
And when the two of them are standing next to each other, it's like, are you even of the same race?
I look like Bilbo Baggins and he looks like Hagrid. It's great.
Well, it wouldn't be Bilbo.
Well,
Just one of the kids in the, one of the Hogwarts students. But yes, Bilbo. Hobbit.
yeah.
Okay. But you look like one of the cute girl hobbits, not Bilbo.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Although Martin Freeman he's pretty handsome. Isn't that his name?
No.
The new Bilbo Baggins
Oh, I don't know.
actor? He's one of my favorite actors. Okay, so, see, rabbit trails. We digress. Using your box as the template, you are going to cut one circle, and this is what's going to fit on the inside of your lid. Which is why you're using the box as the template, because it's designed to fit
Now,
on
does
the inside of your
does
lid.
this need to go right up to the edge of it?
Go right up to the edge of
Okay.
the box, and then you're going to cut it inside that ink edge to compensate for the thickness of your box. Because you want it to fit like right inside, going right up to the corners as best as you can. It's not horrific if it goes up the sides a little bit, but it does make the finishing, the gluing, not quite as easy. Also, it can be slightly smaller because cotton fabric tends to stretch a little bit when it's wet from the glue. And so you can kind of manipulate it a little bit. But if you have it slightly smaller, it needs to be like a 1/16 of an inch around smaller, not like a 1/4 inch.
Okay.
Okay, so let's test that to make sure that it's a good fit. Perfect!
Yay.
Yay! Okay, so now you have your circles, and now we have to cut the strips that are going to go around the banding on the box and around the edges of, or the lid, and around the edges of the box itself. So in order to do that, you're going to want a tape measure or ruler of some kind, and you're going to measure how deep is your lid. Deep meaning this way.
It is a 1/2 inch.
1/2 inch. So you want to double that.
Okay.
And then add on another, for the lid only, add on another 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch,
Okay.
because you are going to have it slightly laying on the inside along the corner, right? So it's not just going to line up with the corner. You want it to actually kind of lay down on the surface of the lid.
Mm-hmm.
And you also want it to cover the sides and then also lay down on the top. So I
Okay.
would add on
Maybe 1/4.
1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't think that one completely through. It'll
And
be
then-
written up in the tutorial.
And then I need to measure my length, my diameter
Yes,
around
measure
now.
your diameter just by wrapping this around, or you can just roll the fabric around and see if it's long enough. And you do want a little bit of an
Well,
overlap.
that's about the right length.
Yep.
Let's just do that.
So,
But no, that's the edge. Is that okay if that's the finished edge?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
that's fine.
Okay.
So, for this, I prefer to use, oh, where did it go?
What you looking for?
Oh, Here it is.
Ah,
I prefer to use one of these, which is designed for cutting fabric for quilts, and a rotary cutter. If you don't have one of these, you can make little ink or pencil marks and you can cut with a scissor. But with this, what was your...
1 1/4 is what I need.
1 1/4. So we're gonna... Let's cut this off because that might not glue really well. It's it's the selvage edge of the fabric. It's printed right up to the edge on this design, but I think we're going to cut that off because it just tends to be a little bit tougher. So we're going to cut a straight edge. You just line this up. I have a quilt cutting mat, quilt cutting ruler, rotary cutter. Just cut that off, and then you said 1 1/4 inches. And what's nice with these see-through is you can get it's got a grid on the ruler that you can line up with the lines on the board, and it just makes it really nice.
Yes.
So there you have your band for your lid.
Cool.
Now we're going to do the same thing, except for the box bottom. For this one, you don't want any overlap. You want to measure the height of your box and double it, because you want the edge of your fabric to go right here and your edge of your fabric to stop in the corner.
So we do have a little bit of a weirdness with this because somebody cut this box down at some point.
Yes.
And so it's got a little bit of a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got a weird top that's not super level.
I
So should I just take from the highest point and...
Yeah, so when you put your circles inside the bottom and around the outside of the bottom, they're going to crawl up the edges a little bit.
Right.
So I would actually, and quite enough, so I would actually measure based on the lowest,
Okay.
the valleys rather than the peaks.
So that looks like it's 1 inch and just past a half. I don't know. It's that line.
And, okay, that line. Well, oh, that line? 1 1/2 inches plus 1/8.
Okay. Math is hard.
My husband, if he was here,
Oh, mine
he would be groaning
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
upstairs.
Yeah.
As long as you know where the line is.
That's all that matters.
Okay, so we already know that this is going to be the right length to wrap around the box because
Yes.
it was the right length to wrap around the lid.
Correct.
Okay. So, what was it again?
1 1/4 and 1/8, right?
Or was it 1 1/2 and 1/8?
1 1/2 and 1/8.
So, 3 1/4. Yep. 1 1/2 and 1 1/2 is 3. 1/8 and 1/8 is 1/4.
Okay. I'm trusting you.
So 3 1/4.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. I hope you're not watching this, Fauna.
We're so sorry if you are.
It's a travesty. So we're lining those up there. And we're lining these up here. And cutting. I don't let her handle the sharp tools.
There's a good reason.
Let's hope this is actually enough to wrap around because we didn't really check that. Oh yes.
Perfect.
Because you want at least 1/2 inch of overlap. Because over time, the glue will start to let go at the seam, and you don't want it to pull back and to be able to see what's underneath, right? You just want to see more fabric. I like it when my edges are a little bit frayed and it looks, you know, time worn and loved. Okay, so we're ready. Let's get this out of here. We're ready to glue.
Yay!
So, I just realized, what in the world am I doing with this when I have this? What's wrong with this picture? I'm gonna go get my mother bottle of Mod Podge.
Look at,
Woo, isn't it pretty? We decided that since I have this size brush and this size Mod Podge, it wasn't gonna work. So we just took a little break and went and got.
it's gonna be a fun project.
So, for the record, I don't know about Hobby Lobby. We didn't have Hobby Lobby yet when I bought this giant jug of glue. I went to Craft Warehouse thinking, surely they're gonna have the best selection of glue. This was literally the biggest bottle they had. And so, and I was gluing a lot of boxes. It was when I was prepping these for the retreat. How many did we do? Brandy helped me.
64?
64 maybe?
I think, something like that. That was a lot.
And so I was like, what the heck, Craft Warehouse? I'm just gonna check Michael's. Michael's probably won't have what I need. Well, Michael's caters to school teachers. And they had the mother Mod Podge. I was super excited and I got it 40% off.
Nice.
Yeah.
Those are great coupons. Hobby Lobby has those coupons too.
I'll sit back down again. Yes, they do. I
love
like
Hobby
Hobby
Lobby.
Lobby. We've only had Hobby Lobby for,
Just a couple of months.
yeah, like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And I've already, my kids love it too. My daughter said, Mama, when I get to decorate my room, all I need is Hobby Lobby and Target.
That's cute.
That's my girl.
She's so funny.
Okay, so for the gluing, we are going to start with the box bottom. And you're just going to take your Mod Podge. By the way, if you are doing a lot of Mod Podge-ing, I really recommend these Mod Podge brand brushes, and no, this is not paid advertising. I had to buy my products, but I have for years and years been covering boxes using Mod Podge and just cheap paint brushes from the hardware store. And let me tell you, these brushes are designed for Mod Podge, and guess what? They do a great job. The glue doesn't clump up as fast.
Does it kind of go over the edge a little bit too?
Yes, you're going to want to generously cover the bottom and then go up your edges, I don't know, quarter inch or so. It's going to depend on how much bigger than your box bottom you cut your fabric. But if you go up even further than your fabric on the sides, it's just going to help your fabric to attach.
Teacher, did I do good?
You did good.
Okay.
Don't set your glue onto my cutting board, please.
No, I won't.
So now you're going to take one of your pieces that's cut for your bottom. Make sure it's one of your bottom pieces.
And those are the ones that are a little bit bigger.
Those are the ones that are bigger because they're going to want to wrap around the edge. And then lay it on there, and starting in the middle, kind of press it out. Your hands are going to get sticky, by the way. Then you can peel your hand and pretend like you're losing your skin. You did that in elementary school.
I mean, absolutely.
Please tell me I wasn't the only one.
Oh, no, we would do that for fun.
Oh yeah, and you would put layers on and let it dry, and then another layer and let it dry. And when recess over, you were like, oh! And you're doing your schoolwork trying to not like crack your glue so that you can continue the process at lunch break. So if you put plenty of glue on, it's gonna just wrap around really nice. If you have a couple places that are pulled out from the edge like this, just go over them with your brush. Because if you let those bumps dry rigid like that, it's going to cause problems when you go around the side with your band. So just do a quick, brush over, make sure they're laying there. Make sure it's laying relatively flat against the sides. And then set that How are we going to do this?
Well, because when we made the big project boxes, we had time.
Yes.
Okay, some of
We're
them are
trying to
not
do
laying
this.
down super good. Is
Yeah,
that okay?
just do what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Fingers work sometimes better than finger brushes. Glue brushes, paint brushes, whatever you're using.
Toothbrushes. Okay. Done.
Okay. Let's let that sit for a second, and we are going to move to the sides of your lid.
Okay.
Okay? And again, you're going to paint all around the outside and a little bit of the top where you're going to wrap it over.
But we're not going to worry about the inside part of our lid yet?
Not yet.
Okay. It does help, I imagine, if you've got time to let things dry between processes.
Yes, although Mod Podge sets up pretty quickly, especially when you're gluing fabric. If you're gluing paper, I don't know, it seems like it stays sticky longer, but the fabric absorbs the glue quickly.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I
So-
feel like I'm making a giant mess.
You are. But isn't it fun?
It's great.
So now you're going to take your fabric that goes on the lid and you're going to start laying it on the side with just a little bit sticking up over the top. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I would just lay it all the way around the outside, like so. I don't know if you guys can see how I've got it extending a little bit beyond the top of the lid. And when you get to where it overlaps the other end, just stick a little more glue on the fabric itself. Whoop! No, my baby. Probably should have switched surfaces, but that's okay. And then just go around, I'm gluing it to myself. Go around the top and just fold that edge over. Now, how much you go over the top is going to depend on how big you cut your needlework piece. Does that make sense? So
Whoops.
you're basically going over the edge a little bit, because then when you put your needlework piece on top, you don't want to see the original box underneath. This one doesn't have to be quite as perfectly attached because you're going to stick something on top of it.
This felt easier when we were doing it before. Why? Why is that?
You're doing a smaller box, which actually does make it a little bit more difficult,
Okay.
believe it or not. Sometimes smaller does not mean it's easier. All right, well, I happen to have a handy coffee cup ready, so I'm going to set that on top of it to dry. Soup can works, your Mod Podge bottle. My eyelid just started twitching.
Are you stressed? Am I stressing you out, Beth?
Is that what causes that?
Uh-huh. For me, it does.
Really?
I had an eye twitch for months when I was working. It was not good.
I never...
No, it wasn't when I was working, but yeah, it was terrible.
Huh.
It was when I was going to school, and
Well, that'll do it to you.
and Matt was working the railroad, and I was single parenting.
Ugh. So now we're going to glue the inside bottom of your box. Again, going a little bit up the edge because the circle for your inside, you want to cover that inside corner and go up a little ways. Eyelid twitches are just random for me. I've never associated them with...
Well, then let's not assume I'm stressing you out. Or I've just given you a whole new thing to think about.
Yeah.
Now you're worried.
Yeah. So I find it easiest. This might be one of the most
Oh my gosh.
tricky parts of the process is getting your fabric piece centered inside your box. I like to kind of fold mine in a quarter like that. Find the center point inside my box and then unfold it. And the nice thing about Mod Podge and fabric is you can, for a little while, like reposition your fabric.
It's pretty forgiving.
But once it
Till it
starts to
sets.
set, you have to kind of just wait for it to dry and then pull it up.
Yeah.
So you're gonna, with your fingers, kind of start in the middle and just gently like flick it out to the outside edge to help eliminate any wrinkles. And then, as before, you're gonna go around the edge and make sure that you're not getting any puckers that are gonna dry that way.
This is going to be cute.
It
I'm
is.
excited.
When you said that you had ugly roses that you were gonna use for this, I was expecting ugly, and I actually like your roses a lot.
Well, I got the better of the ugly roses. I had another ugly rose, but it was too ugly. But I might give it a shot. I might give it a coffee bath and see what I can do with it.
Maybe you can design a gnome to go with it.
I
She could be named Rosie.
I do. There you go. I do want to make a gnome. I haven't found any gnomes so far that I like, any gnome patterns. So, I figured I'll just make my own.
I would design one, but my
Doesn't really go with
calendar
your-
is full.
It doesn't
I
really
think
go
I
with
could
your
work a
theme.
little gnome person into a
I mean,
sampler.
You should. You should.
I've worked things like chocolate cake into samplers before,
That's-
so if I can do
there
that,
you
I
go.
can add a gnome, right?
There you go.
So at this point, you are more or less going to have inside, bottom, and edge. I like this fabric. I wasn't sure I was going to like it, but I
It's
do.
super cute. I really like it.
So now let's go back to our lid if you're ready.
Sure.
And we're going to wrap this down and then lay it against the inside of the lid. So you're going to glue that inside flat part of the lid and just let your brush apply glue also to the floor of the lid, the inside,
ceiling of the lid.
the ceiling of the lid. That makes more sense. The floor of the box, the ceiling of the lid. And then you're gonna start at one of your edges and you're just gonna wrap it down, and then with your fingernails you're gonna kind of press it into, I should have cut mine a little bit bigger. I think it'll be fine. Kind of press it up into the crack of, or crack, the seam, the inside corner edge of your lid.
Between the wall and the ceiling of your lid. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
That part? Yeah.
That part. Where the rim meets the ceiling. And again, you know, reinforce the overlap part with glue. If nothing else, hopefully we've provided a good laugh for you today. We should do more tutorials. This is fun.
It is fun. I enjoy it. God knows I have some more to learn.
Here's a
so-
suggestion. If you want Brandy and Beth to demonstrate how to make something else, it has to be needlework related, please.
Or Lefsa.
We could do a Lefsa tutorial.
We could do a Lefsa tutorial. I taught Beth how to make Lefsa.
She did. My grandma always made it growing up, and she would always do it in advance. And I never once got to experience making lefse with my grandma.
That's so sad. But
Because
you know
actually
what?
my grandpa was Norwegian. My grandma was from Oklahoma. But she just kind of took over the, you know, the Norwegian heritage stuff.
Right.
Because my grandpa didn't cook.
I never made it with my grandparents either. Come to think of it. Okay. Well, think I could have made mine a little bit longer too.
I think yours is going to be just fine. So the next step, while we still have a damp glue on the inside of the lid, is just to carry on. And let's finish the fabric covering of the lid. We're actually getting pretty close to being done with this project. It all comes together quickly in the end. So you'll get your piece of fabric, and with this one, because I'm not going up to the edges at all, I don't do the foldy thingy. I don't know, that's just, I just kind of...
You just kind of set it in,
Just
I
kind of
think.
drag it in. And then smooth it right up to the edges. Where it overlaps fabric, you may need to kind of just go over the top with some glue, and that glue will soak through the layers and just set it in place. All done.
Yay!
How'd yours turn out?
Pretty good,
Yeah,
I
it
think.
looks great.
I got that one little bubble there, but I can't seem to fix it. So I think it's okay.
Yeah, glue bubbles. Can't live with them, can't live without them.
You know, it is what it is.
Okay, now we are going to do the final step of our box floor bottom.
The floor
Are
of
you
our box.
peeling skin?
I am.
So I like to start with the outside of the box because that's the part that shows. And I glue a section of the outside because if you glue the whole thing, it's just messy and sticky. And then I get the strip of fabric that I cut for that, and I start lining it up with the bottom edge and kind of gently tugging it. I ironed this fabric, but there's still some creases in it. I didn't do a very good job. So I'm pulling it hard enough that it pulls those creases out as it's gluing. And I'm just keeping it lined up with that bottom corner of the box. Capiche?
Oh, I didn't do it.
No, you didn't. I'll just rub it in. And then once I reach the end of my glue, I add another section of glue, and just be generous too. Like,
this is a good motto for life. Just be generous.
be generous, that's right.
Generous with Mod Podge, generous with kindness.
That's right.
I'm running for president.
You should.
That's going to be my campaign slogan.
Mod Podge. You know, I just noticed I can see the fabric, the wallpaper print through this fabric. Kind of.
It's really super faint. I don't think you can like tell what it is. It just kind of looks like shadows. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh.
Or that's just hopeful thinking on my part.
Optimist. All right. So when you get to the overlap part, once again, I've got quite a generous overlap here.
Me too.
Once again, be generous, be kind. Don't skimp. Frugality has its time and its place.
But not with Mod Podge.
No.
Oh, well.
It smells weird in here. It's like a combination of coffee and Mod Podge.
And regret.
And brownies and regret. My 12-year-old has been making goodies for youth group almost every week.
Oh, wow.
And he made brownies last night, so
Nice.
it's regret. No room for regret. What does regret even smell like?
It's not good. Doesn't smell like brownies, I'll tell you that.
Smells like words that we shouldn't say on air.
Smells like ufta.
It smells like oofta. So So then on the inside,
Do I care that I have threads sticking out? I do. I feel like I do.
do you care?
I care.
Okay. I don't care. I like the threads sticking out. Now you are going to, starting on the fabric that has come up the sides of from your floor, you don't have to get glue onto the bottom of your box this time, because if we cut the fabric right, it should line up with that bottom corner nicely. You're going to go all the way around the inside.
I have to say, this is a lot harder with the small box.
Yeah.
So that's just something to
I'm
like
not surprised.
be aware of.
It's a lot tighter space to work with.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a short person, but I have chubby hands, so it makes it a little bit funny.
Now, I've got the whole inside all glued up.
Oh, the whole inside. I didn't do that.
Yeah, because once you
Oops.
start folding fabric, now
that
that
was
was
me.
you. You can't get back underneath it.
Right, yeah, that
because
totally
it's
makes
inside.
sense.
So you start with where they overlap with your inner fabric, and just start convincing it to go straight down the sides. And if you just move around the circumference of your box, your fabric should follow suit. But this is the part that where the fabric tends to want to be stubborn the most. Actually, mine did really good this time. This is where I have the most problems, where I end up with bubbles and
Oh, I for sure am ending up with
weirdness.
bubbles and weirdness.
I see how I just kind of pulled up that last corner and I got some glue underneath it. And now, what was once a Goodwill wallpaper box, which I didn't love, is now a cute little fabric covered box. I like it. And the lid is ready for needlework to be mounted to it. Actually, I was going to put the lid on, but I wouldn't do that because you might glue your lid to your box at this point.
That would be bad.
We're going to pause the video for a second because I need to get the hot glue gun heated up, because the next step will require hot glue, not Mod Podge. You could, for the next step, use something like an E6000 and just keep a weight on it, because it'll take over 24 hours to cure. That's why I like hot glue, because it's quick.
Now, is hot glue, that's not acid free though, yeah?
Probably not.
Probably the E6000 isn't, or 600, whatever.
I don't
that
think
number is.
E6000 is acid free either.
Right.
Okay, so we've washed our hands, got the hot glue gun heated up, did a little bit of cleaning,
Yes.
and now we're back.
Yes.
So the next step is going to be attaching the lovely needlework to the top of your box.
Yay.
So all this requires is hot glue applied in a very scientifically very scientific manner. I just glue the dickens out of the top of it. You might want to let that sit and reheat for a second. And then plop your needlework on and make sure you have it centered how you want it, and just kind of hold it for 10-15 seconds. Is about as long as it takes the glue to set up. It's warm. It's really cold here today.
Yes.
Well, I think it's warmed up a little bit outside, but it was frosty this morning. Did you have frost down in town?
Oh yeah, we had to scrape our windshield
Yeah.
and everything.
First frost of the year. I mean, we've had a little tiny bit of frost, but not really what counted. Aw, that's so cute.
It's very cute.
I love it. So here is Beth's. Do you notice? Be happy. So this is from Prairie Life Sampler, and attempt number 1 for my sampler for my daughter was on a fabric, a linen, just a plain linen that I had, and I coffee dyed it. I thought I wanted to do the whole thing from scratch, all mine, and I started stitching it. It was an uneven weave. And so my square sampler was going to be rectangular, and the letters looked wonky, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So I started from scratch on an even weave fabric.
I feel that pain.
Was not dyed by me. But I thought when I was going through my pieces of abandoned stitching, it would be fun to have Be Happy.
That's very cute. And there's my roses. Yay.
I love it. And because she used the foam core, her little top piece poofs up a little more, and mine is flatter. So I mention that because it's going to factor into what trims we use. Now, we talked a little bit before we were on a video about the potential for Brandy to use rickrack. And by the way, all of these trims are from Lady Dot Creates, and I will put a link below. She has a shop on Etsy. She has fantastic trims. Chenille, mini pom-pom, rickrack. She has ribbon. She has some cotton lace. She also does velveteen and wool and just about any kind of trims you could possibly want. Cool. And she's super fast, and can't say enough good things about her.
Good.
So Brandy is going to lay her trims along the side of hers and decide which one of these colors she likes best. I had initially thought that I might use some chenille. Now, the purpose of the trim really is just to hide the seam where your top and your lid come together, make it a little more cohesive. I could choose to just leave mine as is. I actually kind of like it. It looks very homespun. But I'm thinking a little bit of pom-pom might do the trick for me.
What do you think? Does that work?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So for the rickrack, yeah, I like the darker. It's nice. To glue it right over, so the main center line of the rickrack goes over that seam. Looks really good.
And again, we're just going to use the hot glue for that?
We're going to use the hot glue for that. And I think for me, I'm going to use this mini pom-pom trim. Has a little bit of ribbon on it. You could cut that off, and your pom-pom trim is then just a little line of pom-pom. But I'm thinking I don't need to take that step because we'll see. I might change my mind. Yeah, that might be too much work to stick that in. So I'm going to de-ribbonize my trim.
You don't like the scissors.
Thank you.
Yep.
And you can glue your trim on. I would wrap it around.
And get the right amount
Do you want to iron it before you glue it on?
I mean, that might not hurt.
We might need to take another recess while I cut and she irons. Again for the umpteenth time. This time, I removed all of the ribbon from my pom-pom, and it's just, if you've never done that before, there's just a thread that attaches this woven ribbon, and all you have to do is just kind of snip, pull, snip, pull, snip, pull, and then you have just your pom-pom. It's a lot easier to work with. I can tell I thought I got all of my frayed ends off, and I didn't. So while I pick them off,
I'm not helping.
that's okay. Brandy went and pressed the rickrack because
Yes.
it can be easier to work with when it's ironed. You don't have to, but you can. So what I am going to do is, with my trusty Ace Hardware hot glue gun, I'm just going to start on one side, and I'm going to put in a fine, well, as fine as I can get it, a little bead of glue right in the seam of where my needlework meets my lid. And then just press my rickrack against it carefully. My fingers are pretty calloused and not easily burned, but it is hot glue, so wearing gloves is not a bad idea when you're doing this.
Word to the wise, when you're using hot glue, if you get it on you and it's burning, don't rip it off, stick it in cold water. Learned that the hard way. You'll pull flesh clear off.
Yeah, that's not fun. So, and it's only the first few seconds that the glue is so hot that it'll do that. Because I just touched it when it was not super hot.
It also depends on how much glue you're using. I got really bad second-degree burns from a glue gun once. It was not fun.
Sucks to be you.
Yeah. I was making the cave for Jesus to come out of for our little preschool Easter program.
How big
And I was
this
upside
cave?
down. It wasn't that big, but it was just like a refrigerator box or something.
Okay,
a
well
washer
that's
box.
decently big.
Yeah, and anyway, I got glue all over my hands. I think I still have scars.
That's kind of an awesome scar to have.
I mean,
though.
it's, you know.
I mean, it could be because you slipped on a banana peel and, or, you know.
Equally
For
plausible
me,
in my
I
life.
have scars on my knees because I was running around my aunt's house. She had this gravel parking lot next to her house, and I was, you know, chasing cousins or something. Tripped and fell, and there was a broken glass in the gravel.
Oh no.
So I already have like ugly knees, and then to have scars on them just adds to their charm.
Evan has a scar on his cheek. My son has a scar on his cheek from when he was like 6 weeks old. He clawed himself and he still has the scar.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Usually babies heal up pretty well without scarring.
He did it like the day before he was getting some professional photographs done.
Nice.
So we have photographic evidence even.
Yeah. Somehow doesn't surprise me.
No.
Evan. Always trying to
Look tough.
influence. I made a mess of that. Look at me. I've got like glue stuck on the outside. That's what I get for gluing and talking at the same time. I'll just cut off the glue.
There you go.
So you can see I have a little bit extra. Can you see that? So I'm just going to make sure when I trim off the extra that I'm not leaving a gap, and that's all there is to it.
Excellent.
And my little box lid is done.
Cute. I
Now
love it.
it's your turn.
Can I trade you places or? Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yes, you can trade me places.
Okay.
Just don't sit on the stool, you'll get too short.
Where'd she go? She went away. So what other wise things do you have for us, Sensei?
No,
Sensei Beth.
I don't know. I need lunch.
Mm.
It's kind of hard to be wise when you're getting hungry.
Yeah,
What else can I talk about? Well, now that you've seen us do this, do you see how you could do just the needlework portion and attach it to the top of a box that you really like? I don't want to reach across Brandy, but for example, that little green box that has a nice, you know, distressed look to it. You could just attach the needlework portion and a trim and be done, or the little tin. And then if you're just going to do a plain fabric covered box like my sampler box, you just treat top and bottom the same way, where you have the fabric that slightly wraps around the edge and then your band covers. There's so many different ways that you can do this. You could even get a little box top like what Brandy has done and do what she's doing and turn it into an ornament for your Christmas tree. It doesn't have to be a lid.
What about like an Altoid tin?
Oh yeah, like a little
you do that?
rectangular Altoid tin.
Because who doesn't have one of those at the bottom of their purse?
Right, but aren't they printed on all sides? It would be hard, there's such a tight fitting lid, it would be hard to cover them in fabric.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
You could. Or you could paint it.
Well, I was thinking even just like doing something on the top. But I don't think you probably need
Depends
the
on how
86,000
much.
for that.
Depends on how much you. Yeah, you would want the 86,000 for that because I don't think hot glue would hold to metal real well.
It wouldn't.
And it also depends on how much you like the graphics that come with the Altoid tin.
Right.
How's it going over there?
Pretty good. Ooh, my rickrack like ended.
It matched up perfectly.
Perfect. Ooh, that makes me so happy.
Here. Oh, the scissors that you hate. You want me
Yeah.
to cut it?
Mm-hmm.
You can just stick a little dot of glue under that, and it'll hold itself.
Ow.
You burn
A
yourself?
little bit.
Good job.
Thanks.
Now, let's hold our boxes and smile for
They're
the
so
camera.
cute. Except my
'Cause
lid
this
doesn't
might-
want to fit.
This might be like the. Oh, is it too tight?
It's a little snug. We'll get it. There we go.
Sometimes these boxes, when you're done, aren't necessarily for daily use because. Yeah, mine's pretty tight too.
Is it? Well, okay. But they look great.
They do. There, I got it. Also, letting them dry all the way would be a good idea before you force a lid on, but
Yeah.
for the purposes of our little screenshot. There it is.
Yay!
So that's how I cover boxes.
Perfect.
Any parting words?
Thanks. This has been a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of fun.
I've enjoyed it.
We should do it again.
I think so.
If you have any suggestions, let us know.
Indeed.
We could have our own, like, no, we don't need another second channel.
No, that'd
That
be
would
crazy.
That would be silly.
Yeah.
We'll just keep it on our channels how they are.
Yeah.
So go look up my friend Brandy
Yay.
and watch her videos.
Yeah. Come check it out.
Bye.
Bye.